Good afternoon, everybody. Happy Tuesday. Welcome to the show. I am Dennis Hendrickson, and today we got some interesting news that's popping off. It's always, they should name that show, it's crazy in Philadelphia, it's crazy in Minneapolis, because there's always some weird, nutty thing going on. So we're going to talk about Don Lemon, or Don Lemon, or Don Gamon, whatever you call him now. We're also going to get into Miami. Miami now has a liberal mayor and is now sending police around to people who are making Facebook posts. So things are not going very well in the state of Florida, especially Miami. Things have been turning around. It is not a good sign when people are sending the police around to ask about a Facebook post. And you're going to be surprised when you actually see this Facebook post and when they read it, how absurd it is. You don't have to agree with it, but it is innocuous to the point where it was not at all justified to send police to this person's home. So we're going to get into that. We're going to get into also, if we have time today, is get into some taxes and discuss that. But let's get things started with a couple of. We'll continue on from our Sunday live stream. I did not do a live stream yesterday. I was doing white people stuff, playing golf. So it was for a charity event. So it was actually for a good cause, playing golf. But didn't do the stream yesterday, but we're going to make up for it. But on Sunday, we talked about, we were going hard on baby boomers. We were going super hard. And there's a few videos that I want to show today on a continuation of the frustration with boomers. And take a look at this.
You might want to repark your car, though. I'm very. Whoa, man! Get off my stuff. Get off my. Get off. Hey! Don't touch my stuff.
Man.
Do not touch my stuff.
What the fuck is wrong with you?
What are you doing?
You?
Don't touch my stuff again.
You shut her up real quick.
That's what you get for putting your hands on people. That's where I'll find out.
It's always the same reaction, isn't it? She's a Buccaneer. She's wearing a Buccaneers shirt too, which is really strange. I don't know where I get. I wonder if this takes place in Tampa or not. I'm not sure. But isn't it interesting? Turvit used the right is under attack. Yes, welcome to the show. Make sure you subscribe. Yeah, they these particular people, for whatever reason, and when I show you this next one, it's just this weird thing that's going on with these groups of people. And she just thinks that she can go ahead and grab this guy and physically assault him, and then she gets the pepper spray right in the face, and then just shuts right up and walks away, which should happen. But here's something that's even crazier. I don't know if you've heard about this going on in Targets, let me know, but listen to this. This is nuts.
Video, folks. I want people to see this live video. We are at the Target in Edina. We've got to have about 70 people in line here.
So if you can't read the thing, what it says is anti-ICE activists are now buying salt at Target and then turning right around and returning it in order to protest ICE. These people are seriously deranged. This is from Libs of TikTok. Now pay special attention to the people that are in line.
Everybody bought salt and they're returning it. Why? Because we are asking that Target step up as a corporation of moral courage in this critical moment in our country. ICE is leveraging Target's silence. They are abducting Target employees. They are staging in Target parking lots. They are going into Target stores and using it as propaganda opportunities. We are asking Target, whose whole brand has been built on serving the communities in which they are, to step up, speak out, use the corporate power that they have, because we know that's the only thing, folks. I want people.
Okay, so apparently what's happening is these people are angry at the fact that ICE is using their parking lots to stage to prepare for going off onto their missions or whatever it is. But do you notice who all the people are? They're white boomer Americans. And all of these people are all the same. And once again, what we were talking about on Sunday is you're talking about these people who they don't care about their kids. They don't care about their grandkids. In the video that we watched, it's the last live stream on Sunday. You can check that out after this one and watch it. And there was a video very well done about how right now these people who unfortunately control a very, very large portion of wealth are making these decisions and doing these types of things, just not thinking at all about their kids and their grandkids, not caring at all about their lives, what's going to happen in their lives in the future. And God forbid you call them out on it or complain about it. And then that's what happens in the previous clip that I just showed you. You just have these people who are just lunatics. And it's really sad because you have these subsequent generations that are suffering as a result of this. I'm going to come back to this on, this is Amazon now. This is kind of a separate subject related to what's happening with a lot of these major corporations when it comes to monopolies and things like that. So I'm going to skip along here to Don Lemon, and he is potentially facing serious charges for what he's done. Those of you who don't know, he went into a church in Minneapolis along with a bunch of other violent leftist protests and interrupted the service and had a lot of people extremely upset, especially children. There were children in there not knowing what was going on, not understanding what was going on. And as a result, the DOJ is saying that he will potentially face charges. So let's go ahead and listen to a couple of videos discussing it.
Hello again, everyone. Welcome to Washington Gun Law TV. I am Washington Gun Law President William Kirk. Thanks for joining us. Where the heck are we? We are in our hotel room in the fabulous Las Vegas, Nevada. We are down here for SHOT Show 2026. And thank you for all of you who tuned in to WGLAM this morning to go over the orders list. Listen, you know, there's really nothing more pathetic in a lot of ways than a disgraced former journalist, if you would, who suddenly is trying to keep themselves relevant. And you thought Jim Acosta was bad. Oh yeah, he was bad. But check out what Don Lemon has done. That's right, we're going to be talking about this very regrettable incident that took place in Minnesota a couple of days ago. But more importantly, we're going to talk about how much trouble could Don Lemon actually be in? Is there actually legal liability that he could face? Well, the answer is yes. So today, let's get you all educated and let's talk about how much trouble is Don Lemon in? Okay, America, listen, we're going to step out of our lane a little bit because, again, it's an opportunity to actually explain the application of the law to a set of facts. The set of facts, we're not going to go back and rehash. You guys have seen the video 1,000 times. We are talking about the one, the only Don Lemon and his rowdy gang of protesters that decided to just step inside of a church and interrupt services while they were going Sunday, all because the pastor apparently also works for Immigration Customs Enforcement.
I did not know that, by the way. So this is interesting that the pastor of this church actually worked for ICE or works for ICE. So sort of makes a little bit more sense on why they decided to attack this church. Now, we'll find out as we go through this and then the other video on whether or not that's aggravating circumstances or not. But it is an interesting fact that I did not know previously.
Okay, so this is what we're going to talk about today. What he did. Number one, was it unlawful? Number two, can he be prosecuted for this? And number three, how much trouble is he really in? And in order to get you to understand that, we're going to explain two separate statutes.
Hey, Josh, welcome. Mariana as well. Yeah, when do the arrests begin? And that's the thing. And as we watch this, think about it. And you know what? I'm actually going to do a poll before we continue on. Do you actually think that there are going to be any arrests when it comes to any of this stuff? I mean, a lot of the protesters, you know, some are getting arrested. But I mean, things like this with Don Lemon and others, will there be significant arrests? Yes or no? Yeah, and Pam Bondi seemingly is all talk.
Because the truth of the matter is Don Lemon could be in trouble depending on whether or not the United States Department of Justice actually pursues investigation and potential indictment on this. He could actually face trouble from state officials, but we all know there will be no charges filed by the Attorney General of the state of Minnesota. So the two statutes that we're going to get you acquainted with today. Number one is one called the FACE Act, which stands for Freedom of Access to Clinic Entrances Act. Passed in 1994, it is found in 18 United States Code Section 248. We're also going to get to talk about the Ku Klux Klan Act of 1871, which has now been codified in several sections, but most importantly in 42 United States Code Section 1983. We're actually going to be talking about a couple of sections just past that. Now, the FACE Act was passed in 1994 in response to a bunch of protesting that had been going on at abortion clinics, some of which actually turned violent. The purpose of the statute was to make that type of activity illegal. However, in a compromise of the drafting of the statute, there was additional sections that were added to the FACE Act. In general, what the FACE Act did was it created federal law that makes it a crime to use force, threats, or physical obstruction to block or intimidate people from accessing reproductive health services or places of religious worship. As a matter of fact, the portion of the statute that Mr. Lemon would be prosecuted under would be Section 2. And that section specifically reads, it is unlawful for a person to, by force or threat of force, or by physical obstruction, intentionally injures, intimidates, or interferes with, or attempts to injure, intimidate, or interfere with any person lawfully exercising or seeking to exercise their First Amendment right of religious freedom at a place of religious worship. So yeah, it is a crime under the FACE Act to go in and intentionally interfere and obstruct religious services in the house of worship. Now, if prosecuted, how much trouble could he be in? Well, believe...
And the Biden administration, just so you remember, did use this law when it did come to those abortion clinics. They used it very frequently. By the way, everybody that's listening to this, let me know if the audio is okay. It's looking like in my OBS that it's blowing out, but sounds okay in my headphones. I just want to make sure that it sounds okay to everybody out there.
Believe it or not, the fines can range all the way up to $250,000, and the term of imprisonment can go as high as 3 years. Are we saying any of this is going to happen to Don Lemon? We don't know that, but that's the application of the law to this set of facts.
Thanks, John.
Now, outside of the criminal context, there actually is additional civil penalties that can be sought under Section 248 of the statute, and that specifically reads, such an action may be brought under subsection A2 only by a person lawfully exercising or seeking to exercise their First Amendment right of religious freedom at a place of religious worship or by the entity that owns or operates such place of religious worship. Which means that every single parishioner has standing to bring suit, as does the church itself. And knowing, in fact,
and that's good to know, because then the church can can sue him, I guess personally in that case, because I think the FACE Act or whatever these acts that the DOJ can go after Don Lemon for is, I think they're only misdemeanors and not felonies.
That no action will be taken by any state official in the state of Minnesota, certainly not the Minnesota Attorney General, Mr. Ellison. Can the United States Attorney General initiate these functions? Yes, she most certainly can, because under Section C2 of the same statute, if the Attorney General of the United States has reasonable cause to believe that any person...
I hope that's not true, people, that they do sue. And I would, this with the church, what happened and how many upset people there were, especially kids, when these leftists barged in and were acting violently, that I hope that they do sue.
Or group of persons is being, has been, or may be injured by conduct constituting a violation of this section, the Attorney General may commence a civil action in any appropriate United States District Court. And for non-violent offenses, they could be civilly fined up to $10,000. So understand that the United States Attorney General has two options here. Number one, they can pursue this criminally under the FACE Act, or number two, they can pursue this civilly under the FACE Act. And then remember, all the parishioners and the religious organization itself could also pursue civil actions under the same statute. And then we get to talk about the Ku Klux Klan Act of 1871. Now, this was passed in response to a lot of Southerners that weren't particularly happy about all the slaves being free, and basically had stated that the Ku Klux Klan would serve as the self-defense militia in many of these communities. In order to outlaw many of these activities, the Ku Klux Klan Act of 1871 was passed by Congress. It essentially is a statutory codification of the 14th Amendment, which says, hey, listen, nobody gets to suppress anybody's constitutional rights under the color of state law or even privately. You've heard us talk about 42 United States Code Section 1983 because that is where we see a whole lot of civil suits against state actors that are doing unconstitutional things. But very few people know that in this very large statutory scheme, there actually is other actions that can be taken. Section 2 of the statute specifically addresses this exact kind of activity and absolutely makes it unlawful under the statute. But more importantly, Section 6 of the same statute makes it unlawful for any person to conspire, plan, or help coordinate any of the activities that we're talking about here.
So, I wonder if somebody like Soros or any of the organizations related to Soros helped coordinate this plan. And I agree, Vinny, if Lemon isn't prosecuted, I'm done with this government. I wouldn't hold your breath. I don't think they're going to do anything. And I mean, I hope they do. I really do, because all of this stuff is going to continue on. And you damn well know that if the Democrats get back into office again, they're going to do it. And Trump is going to pardon himself and pardon everybody around him, but everybody else is kind of left out to twist in the wind. And so if these people don't, even if, I mean, in this particular case, this one's easy. It's an easy prosecution. And it would really be terrible if the government or DOJ doesn't bring charges against Lemon, and then the church and the organizers of the church, or the parishioner, pastor, or whatever, brings a lawsuit against him, and the DOJ does nothing. But as we'll see in the subsequent video, Harmeet Dillon is saying that they're going to. We'll see.
In addition to that, it also states that if you know these types of unlawful activities are going to occur and you choose to do nothing about it and not notify anyone, yeah, you can be held liable for that as well. If there was just some evidence out there somewhere, or some way to launch an investigation to see what did Don Lemon actually know before he went to Minnesota, well, maybe we could pay attention to this post by Nakima Levi Armstrong, We're going to link it up down below, but just to read you the post real quick. Friends, here's a clip of our demonstration this morning at City's Church in St. Paul. David Easterwood is a pastor at this church and the acting field director for the ICE office in St. Paul.
See, there you go. Acting field director for the ICE office in St. Paul. So that you can't tell me that that's not an aggravating circumstance. So, and then by the way, if he wasn't an acting ICE director, do you think that Harmeet Dillon would come out and say that they're going to press charges against this group and Don Lemon? I wonder. Let me know what you guys say about that.
It's time for judgment to begin, and it will begin in the house of God. And I want you to think for a second just how demented, just absolutely how demented that type of speech is. But then Miss Armstrong goes on to further state, thank you to all of the activists who showed up, plus independent journalists. Georgia Fort, Don Lemon, the Woke Farmer 2, Brixton Hughes. Special thanks to Monique Cullors-Dottie, Chantil Allen, Satara Strong Allen for co-organizing this mission from, and then it lists the groups that actually have assisted in that. So it would appear that Mr. Lemon, at least there is a possibility, was well aware of this. I mean, he did go to Minnesota for a reason now. And when we go back and we take a look at the statutory schemes, which once again is the FACE Act found in 18 United States Code Section 248, as well as the Ku Klux Klan Act of 1871 found in 42 United States Code Section 1983 all the way through 1986. Is Don Lemon potentially in criminal and civil liability for this outrageous act? The answer?
Yes, absolutely he is. And before we continue, everybody that's here, we've got 80 people, concurrent viewers. We have close to 1,000 views. Everybody that's here, please do me a huge favor. If you like this content and you are one of those people who cannot stand to see people like Don Lemon and others crazy leftists take over government, raid churches, threaten people of religion, and make children upset, please make sure that you subscribe. We'll continue to do more stories like this, more current events, and discuss them. Either way, either side, whether you agree or disagree, you are all welcome here. But if you want to be notified of our continued live streams and other videos, be sure that you subscribe.
He most definitely is. Now the question remains, what if anything is going to be done by it? And again, as we've mentioned, we know that there will be no action taken by any official out of the state of Minnesota. So will the United States Department of Justice do something, and how quickly will they do it? That remains to be seen. Okay, now listen, we'll go ahead and link up all the statutes down below so that you don't have to take our word for it. You can just geek out on it for yourself. If you got any questions about this or about the stuff we normally talk about here, you should know how to get a hold of us by now, but if you don't, that's okay. That information is down there in the description box. If you got an idea for a video, maybe a topic that we want.
All right, let's move on to the next one. That guy did a really good job, who happened to be a lawyer, and explained the statutes of what's going on. We'll move on to Tim Pool, who actually did a good job. He covered what was going on Benny Johnson's show. Not a huge fan of Benny Johnson, but at the same time, these guys sort of broke the story on what's going on and did have a conversation with Harmeet Dillon, who is the person who did say that the Department of Justice is going to file charges against Don Lemon. So let's see, or let's listen to what these guys have to say.
We've got a massive...
And by the way, Wendy, welcome. Tammy, welcome. Vinny's new. Thanks for being here, people. Joshua, again, make sure that you guys subscribe, and I appreciate you being here and watching.
Update to the story I did this morning. Shout out to the Benny Johnson Show interview with Harmeet Dillon, where they're confirming Don Lemon will face charges under potentially the KKK Act and maybe the FACE Act. Now, I want to show you a little bit from Benny and Harmeet's conversation. I'm not one to normally pull up someone else's show with breaking news this quickly or in this way. But Benny Johnson with an absolute massive story in his interview with Harmeet Dillon, saying DOJ announces intention to charge Don Lemon under the KKK Act. The KKK Act makes it illegal to threaten, hurt, or intimidate people to prevent them from exercising their God-given rights. Harmeet Dillon saying the Klan Act is one of the most important federal civil rights statutes. It's a law that makes it illegal to terrorize and violate the civil rights of citizens. Now, there have been many comments made recently as the story develops around Don Lemon going into this church. I do want to pull up, there might be something I can pull up and add to this. Let me see if I can find it. Commentary that's basically saying, Don Lemon, I have this tweet from Eric Doherty. Let me see if I can pull this one up. Video of Don Lemon saying he knew in advance and that they were going to intentionally catch people off guard. This is incriminating. And now he's facing charges. Let me play this clip for you from the Benny Johnson show. Again, shout out to Benny. Amazing work. Harmeet Dillon, thank you for talking about this and expressing it and getting it on the Benny show. We don't get enough transparency from government, but check this out.
We will pursue charges in this case. I see various crimes that have occurred. Exactly what they are, I'm not going to flag, but the FACE Act has been mentioned as one of the predicates there. In other cases, the Biden DOJ used the Klan Act conspiracy charges tacked on to the FACE Act in the case of protests outside abortion clinics to bring much longer sentences. So there are a number of tools available to us. Who funded this? What else? What other crimes may have occurred? Was there a use of the
And that's, again, too, what she's talking about in this is who funded this. Because if we don't, it's nice that you're going to bring charges against maybe Don Lemon and the other people that participated in this. But if you don't go after the head of the snake, then this is just going to continue on and on and on. And this is the problem I've had with the Trump administration, is that back in the summer of love, it's rumored that he was advised to let all of these protests continue on without cracking down on them, because optics-wise, it made it better. It was a better look for him, and that people would get all pissed off at the fact that this stuff was happening, and they would vote for him for law and order. Now, if that's the case, that's a terrible thing, in my opinion. I think he would, and he's running the risk if that's continuing, if he's getting that same advice, that the base is going to say, they're going to throw their hands in the air and say, I'm done. I'm just going to either not vote or vote the other way. This has gone on too long. This kind of stuff cannot continue. And until somebody starts cracking down and giving him the right advice to say enough is enough, you got to stop this stuff, he's really going to run the risk. I mean, right now, we're coming up on the midterms. The midterms, as far as I'm concerned, you guys let me know in the chat, the midterms at this point are at risk. No question about it. And so if Harmeet Dillon and even Pam Bondi, these guys aren't doing anything until they start laying down the law, literally, then Trump is going to be at the midterms are in danger, seriously.
Buyers or the males in preparing for this event.
Wow.
Did anyone cross state lines to do this? All of those are potential predicates for additional federal charges.
I've just pulled up the Klan Act because this is the first time that I've heard this mentioned. This is a act that was passed in 1871, correction there, to combat the Ku Klux Klan and protect African Americans' voting rights, especially the Enforcement Act, which is known as the Force Act. So here's some of the information on screen. Would you mind breaking down for us, because we have just read the FACE Act and how this is an affinity to the FACE Act and obvious and egregious.
Now, I want to make sure something's very, very clear. In the clip, she doesn't explicitly state Don Lemon's name. I think she may be broadly referring to all of the people involved, but here's where it gets interesting. This clip, let me play this clip from Don Lemon for you.
Into Minneapolis a little bit ago and did some reconnaissance on the ground, speaking to an organization there that's gearing up for resistance and protest.
Yeah, Joshua, Merrick Garland had no problem arresting everybody. Everyone was arrested. They did not hesitate. What do you think is going to happen if they get back into office again?
I've been pleasantly surprised to see the community coming together. Diverse community. If you see this, when we first pulled up, we're like, wait a minute, which operation are we at? And as it turns out, because we're like, well, this is kind of MAGA coded, right? Saw the American flag or whatever, but these are resistance protesters. They're planning an operation that we're going to follow them on. I can't tell you exactly what they're doing, but it's called Operation Pull Up, and it's Takima Armstrong, and she has been doing this since George Floyd.
So there, he admits on camera he knew everything that was going to happen and what's going on.
Dante Wright and others, where they surprise people, catch them off guard, and hold them to account. And so that's what we're doing here. And then we're after that.
Pull up on people, surprise them, and hold them to account. So you break into a church and terrorize people in a church. And by the way, how many churches out there have had gun violence, people coming in and shooting up churches? So Don Lemon thinks that this is a good idea.
After we do this operation, you'll see it live. And these operations are surprise operations. Again, can't tell you where they're going.
Surprise operations. Jorge Benila says, intent. Let me show you this. Yep. The opening to Don Lemon's insane live stream is an admission of foreknowledge. The group he was in contact with was going to storm a church based on his prior communications with its leader. Now, I do want to stress this. There's a question of whether or not you're allowed to be a journalist following a group that you know is going to break the law.
What he's going to say here, this is really interesting and very important to pay attention to, because the argument would be, well, I was just going along. Now, what Don Lemon is actually saying is, I was acting as a journalist. I was doing journalism, but that's not a defense in this case.
But let's talk about gradient. Let's talk about degrees. If a group of people said, we are going to rob a bank, and you went, I'm a reporter, I'm going to follow you as you do it, you'd probably get in trouble. Now, the question is, how serious will the DOJ take the FACE Act and the Klan Act? Because if they say this is serious federal law, you had foreknowledge of a crime that was to be committed, and you went with them. The issue here is, I put it like this, reasonably, I don't think you'd charge Don Lemon under the same laws as you charge the extremists. But I do think there's going to be charges, largely because being a journalist or press does not give you the right to enter private property and violate.
American Patriot, thanks for subscribing. And those of you that do subscribe, I do have an alert box that didn't show up. It's with Streamlabs. For some reason, it works. Sometimes it doesn't work all the time. I will do my best to shout you out if you have your allowance of notifications when you do subscribe. So American Patriot, J Book, Jasbir Hanjan, Stanley Palchak, I appreciate the subscribes. And once again, those of you that are here that enjoy this content, please be sure to subscribe for notifications on my live streams that I do every day at 2 p.m., Monday through Friday.
Other people's rights. So they may actually pursue some type of charges related to the Klan Act. Now, I want to play the greater segment. I think it's very important to get the clarification. If she's explicitly talking about Don Lemon in the group.
Demonstrable violation of the FACE Act because they were entering a place of worship, harassing and threatening. We just played a video of a bearded man, who was threatening to attack the Christians that were worshiping there. So it seems like an obvious FACE Act violation. But the Klan Act here, it is on screen. First time I've heard it mentioned. Can you unpack this for us, Harmeet?
Yeah, the Klan Act is one of the most important federal civil rights statutes, and it goes back to the time when President Lincoln emancipated the slaves, and yet the southern states, Dixiecrats mainly, were refusing to give them equal rights. And in fact, that you had sheriffs and you had law enforcement harassing the newly freed slaves. So the Klan Act is a law that makes it illegal to terrorize citizens, to violate their civil rights, to get together and conspire to violate the civil rights. It is often used against law enforcement, but is now used against others as well. So whenever anyone conspires to violate the protected civil rights of American citizens, the Klan Act can be used to bring a conspiracy charge. We, in the federal law enforcement parlance, call this 241 and 242 civil and criminal conspiracies. And so what the Biden administration did is, if 3 grandmas got together to pray outside an abortion clinic for the souls of the people inside, and including unborn children, they would say, oh, that's not just a violation of the Klan Act, that's a conspiracy to violate the civil rights of women going in there to get abortions. And so we're going to add additional charges and punish that more and make it from a misdemeanor under the FACE Act to a felony under the Klan Act. And President Trump pardoned the pro-life protesters in those cases. I have recently defended successfully in the 11th Circuit a case called Oropesa, a case of Jane's Revenge, the pro-abortion protesters violently attacking crisis pregnancy centers in Florida. And we had the court uphold the Klan Act criminal enhancement to the FACE Act. So I know this is very deep in the weeds, but the point is, there are a number of things. The FACE Act is just the start. Like I said, you have material support for disruptive activities. You have conspiracy to violate civil rights. You have potentially the use of other instrumentalities to commit crimes. And so some of these.
Now, what worries me about her, kind of naming all of these different things and saying, well, we with the Klan Act, we take it to a felony, et cetera, is, okay, are you actually going to do it? Or is this just more talk like we've gotten from Pam Bondi and others, where they throw the base red meat, get them all excited about something, and then they don't do anything at all? So that's definitely a worry that I have. We'll see what happens, but yeah, I mean, for the fact that he knew about it and didn't report it to law enforcement, it's similar to what Tim Pool was saying. If you're aware of what's going on in the bank robbery and you don't report it, then you can be charged along with him. It's probably not as a serious of a crime, but you can still be charged. And that's where, again, I kind of worry about this on whether or not it's really going to go anywhere.
Folks who did this have self-identified. Don Lemon himself has come out and said he knew exactly what was going to happen inside that facility. He went into the facility and then he began, quote unquote, committing journalism. And as if that's sort of a shield from being an embedded part of a criminal conspiracy. It isn't. And so,
wow.
And then Tim Pool's getting all excited about it. And it's like, I'm sorry, but I'm not that excited yet. When you actually charge him and you start seeing the charges, and they do a perp walk like they've done with Steve Bannon and Peter Navarro, and by the way, Peter Navarro and Steve Bannon were perp walked, arrested, and charged for not testifying in front of Congress. Both the Clintons did the exact same thing. Now, those of you in the chat, do you think the Clintons are going to get arrested and perp walked like Steve Bannon and Peter Navarro, who are both, by the way, on Trump's team? Peter Navarro is currently, and was on the previous Trump administration. Steve Bannon was on the previous administration, not now, Trump administration. Both were arrested for ignoring subpoenas. And so my question to you is, do you think that the Clintons, who did the exact same thing, do you think they're going to be held accountable? And that's the litmus test here. And that's why most people are like, okay, Harmeet Dillon, this is great, but are you actually going to charge somebody? And by the way, if Don Lemon does get charged, who cares? I mean, it'd be great. I think it's awesome, but it's not significant really in any way. The people who organized it, the ones who were in control, the ones who put the money into it, the people who got this thing all set up in the first place, if they get charged, that's a completely different scenario.
We're getting our ducks in a row. We're putting the facts together. And this is a very serious matter. Come next Sunday, nobody should think in the United States that they're going to be able to get away with this. Everyone in the protest community needs to know that the fullest force of the federal government is going to come down and prevent this from happening. But
they are getting away with it so far. Everybody's getting away with it right now. They're violently beating people in the street. They're telling people what to do in this. They've essentially taken over government responsibilities in a way, for the lack of a better word. They're telling people where to drive, where to park, what kind of cars they can drive, all kinds of things. Just like in the Summer of Love, when they just went out there and just did whatever it is that they wanted to do. So that's not necessarily a true statement. What's frustrating watching people like Tim Pool is they're getting all excited about this. Same thing with Benny Johnson. It's like, okay, you guys are laughing and this is so great. What's great about it? All she's doing is talking about it.
People away for a long, long time.
Wow. I mean, this is an absolute hammer drop.
No, it's not.
I mean, she said it. Now, I'm reaching out for clarification just because I want to hear it explicitly. But when she says Don
Lemon was fired from CNN last year, year before. I don't know whether it had to do with ratings or what it was, but CNN's ratings were so bad, or are so bad, that they got rid of a number of anchors, and Don Lemon was one of them. And so he went off independently. Now he's got producers and everything else, so I don't know if he's hired them on his own or if that's something that where he's getting. My guess is that he's getting funded by some left-wing group or something like that, because for him to be able to travel around and have his deal. Hey, Matt's Music, thanks for subscribing. But for him to have his crew to be able to go around and do the things that he's doing, he's probably getting funding somehow, is my guess. But yeah, for those of you who don't know, Don Lemon did work for CNN and was fired, along with Jim Acosta. Now, Jim Acosta is doing the same thing. And who's the other one? The guy that... Guys, remind me who the other guy is that got fired before those two. But Jim Acosta, he's doing his own thing as well. CNN they had no choice but to fire these guys because their ratings are so low. It's just the people, the women online in Target that were returning the salt that they bought from Target, the boomer women, those are the only people left that are watching CNN right now.
Don Lemon claiming he's committing journalism is no excuse for.
Yeah, Chris Cuomo was one. Who was the other one, though, before him? The one that looked like they make fun of him, the Humpty Dumpty guy. I think he was the first one to go. I can't remember. Hold on, let me look it up. Maybe I'm thinking MSNBC, but I don't think so. I don't know. I can't find it.
For being part of a conspiracy. You have this video. This is why I pulled this one up. You have this video where Don Lemon says he knows what's going to happen. He's with the group.
Upgrade. You gave me gold, no acknowledgement. Good luck. I don't know. Tell me what that YouTube doesn't give me all the information sometimes. So
they're going to do it and he won't tell you. And that's the point I bring about committing crimes. Now, listen, it's one thing if there's civil disobedience. Activists saying, we're going to go march through the street, we're going to get arrested for it, maybe. You don't arrest a journalist for that, I get it. But we're talking about the Klan Act, where these guys went to a church. You're talking about felonies. This is where the line gets drawn. If you know a group is planning to commit a serious crime, and you just say, I'll go with you and film it, you're going to get in trouble. Again, it's not so simple as to say just a crime, right? If someone said, we're all going to jaywalk, and you're like, I'll film it, no one's going to charge you, no one's going to arrest you. The laws in this country are subject to what the society tolerates. And the issue right now is people are pissed about the storming of this church. And Don Lemon saying, I just committed an act of journalism.
Brian Stelter was fired. He was one of the first ones to be fired. And he's off on his own, too. So there's a number of people fired from CNN.
I didn't do anything. You heard it from Harmeet Dillon. Again, I got to give a shout out to Benny Johnson. Excellent interview. This is why these shows have to happen. Because you get that conversation and we get keyed in to the thought process of the DOJ, Harmeet Dillon, who focuses on civil rights. For too long, there has been a one-way street in this country for civil rights. And they've talked about it. You had these little old ladies out in front of an abortion clinic, criminally charged with and sentenced to jail. You had protesters occupying a lobby, and they said it's illegal to be in an abortion clinic. Now, what they did was, because they wanted to make it so that people could get abortions and you couldn't protest it, which is just insane to ban protests. Where's the First Amendment? They said, no, we're protecting everybody. You can't disrupt churches either. Well, the thing was, nobody was disrupting churches. It was just protests at abortion clinics. And they wanted people to get abortions, so they passed this law. But guess what? You made a two-way street, even if it wasn't at the time. And now the DOJ says you can't storm churches. And Don Lemon simply saying, I'm committing journalism, does not
Yeah, Elizabeth Warren. Brian Stelter's a professor at Harvard. Gosh, I'm embarrassed that I attended that school. It's not the same now. All of these universities, it doesn't matter anymore. Your education doesn't mean anything anymore. But yeah, Elizabeth Warren, she lied in order to get into Harvard. Obviously, Pocahontas, that whole backstory. But yeah, now as we were watching Tim Pool here, it's frustrating because once again he's sort of glazing Harmy Dillon and saying how wonderful she is, yet nothing's happened yet. And again, I'll keep repeating myself. The same thing with Pam Bondi. We haven't gotten anything yet. And why would you get all excited? I would say I'll get excited when something actually happens. But then once again, are we going to go after the people that are funding this stuff? Case in point, probably the most simplest argument you can make on any of this stuff is why is it George, the guy, Soros. Why is George Soros? He hasn't even been brought up in front of Congress. He hasn't been charged with anything. And it's very well known that George Soros and now Alexander Soros' son are involved in a lot of this stuff. And somebody's funding it somehow because all of these people get activated and then they all go out and do all these things. So the problem is that none of the people who are funding this, like a George Soros, have even been questioned. And that to me is extremely concerning. And that's why I look at something like this and go, I'm not getting excited about it yet.
absolve you from what Harmeet pointed out is conspiracy. You knew what they were going to do. You wanted to get it on film. You wanted to get in people's faces. I don't mean that aggressively. Like, you wanted to get up and get up to their face and interview them and their shock reaction. You knew it was going to make you money. You knew it was disruptive. You knew you weren't allowed to go in that building in this way. And now here we are. I don't believe, I'm just going to give you my opinion. I don't think Don Lemon should get the same charge as everybody else. I think he should get some, there's got to be some accountability for this. He can stand outside, or you know what he should have done? He should have went and asked, there are protesters. Is it okay if I film inside your private establishment? Now, I know it's a public accommodation. Doesn't mean you can just storm in with people you know are committing crime to film them and the reaction of their victims. Therein lies the big problem, okay? If you, like I mentioned this in the earlier segment, you walk into a Walmart filming, they're going to ask you to leave. You're going to get trespassed. You don't leave, you can get arrested. Now, usually cops don't want to arrest you for trespass. They'll just forcibly remove you and say stop. Now, what if people are being victimized? This is where it gets bad. Don Lemon knew these people were going to go and terrorize a congregation, okay? Screaming in their faces, threatening them over their political beliefs, disrupting a place of worship. Serious crime. Felony, Harmeet says. He knew. Now, you might argue, and the left will, he's just filming. It's totally allowed. Except Don Lemon knew people were going to be victimized. That's the issue. Let's flip the script. Let's say Nick Sorter knows a group of protesters are going to go into an abortion clinic. And they're going to block the entrance. They're going to scream and disrupt the practices there, which is also protected under the FACE Act. He knows they're going to do it, and he wants to go film the doctors as they're being screamed at. Do you think at all the Biden DOJ is going to be like, nah, he's all right. That was always allowed. No, they're going to say no excuses. You know how I know this? Because I pointed out earlier, Steve Baker was a journalist in the Capitol, and they said, we don't care. They put him in shackles. They did not care. Now, I'm not going to say two wrongs make a right? Just because the Biden DOJ is corrupt, crooked, and evil doesn't mean we should be. But the issue here is that Don Lemon was not just doing an act of journalism. He is with this group in advance, knowing they're about to victimize people. And there is a line. We try to figure out what is reasonable. So let me ask this. And I know the left is going to say, I know what the right's going to say. But I'll give you the moral logic. The Capitol building is typically open to the public. In this instance, it was not. Protesters ripped down the barricades, fought with cops, rioted, and busted their way in. Those people should go to jail. And they did. When the people got in, they opened up doors. And on the other side, there were people who are not rioting, who walked in an open building. They did not know, some of them, that those were riot at all. Police took selfies with them. Smiled. The shaman famously...
So those of you who are questioning January 6th, Tim Pool's explaining that right now. And the hypocrisy of both administrations when it comes to who gets arrested and who doesn't get arrested.
Video was guided to the Senate chambers. Now, you're a journalist. This is a typically public building with a major event, a historical event happening, and you decide to go in with 2 other journalists to document what is happening. That's what he did. And they called him an insurrectionist. They put him in shackles. They arrested him, and they forced...
3938. If you cross the border into the United States, that's an illegal act, so that makes you an illegal.
Him. He pleaded guilty because he knew that they were going to throw the book at him. Some people weren't even allowed to present evidence.
And that's a great point, Joshua. If somebody walks into your house and just sits there and lives in your basement, eats your food, uses your utilities, uses your water, costs you more money because you have to buy more food, buy more fuel to heat, buy more water because they're using your shower, everything else. I mean, it's just such a stupid argument. And I know they're not serious. The people that say that no human is illegal, I know you know that they're not serious. They're being told or paid, most likely paid, to say those things, because if someone walked into their domicile, whatever, like trailer or whatever they lived in, and started eating their food and using their shower and everything, they have a problem with it. Otherwise, they'd have a bunch of these people living in their house, and they'd be taking care of them.
Now, again, let's ignore the trials. Let's just say this. He was charged, despite this being a public place, temporarily closed, and he was documenting this riot. Now, there were other journalists there who were not charged. Elijah Schaffer was not charged. Good, he should not have been. Richie McGinnis, press credentials, should not have been charged and was not. So why was he singled out? In fact, there was a reporter from a local news station who had his big camera filming, and they raided his house. I think it was in like Mississippi or something. The DOJ said, we don't care. So why would Don Lemon, who's slammed the J6ers over and over again, get any kind of special provisions here? He wouldn't. He knew what they were doing. He didn't care. This is crazy. She said it outright, man. Don Lemon is coming for you. I'm going to wrap it there, my friends. Smash the like button.
All right, let's listen to the actual interview between Benny and Harmeet Dillon.
It's going down. Let's go.
Harmeet, I want to thank you for being on the program today, and I appreciate your commentary yesterday. It was, in fact, the first, I believe, member of the Trump administration to hop on and say this. The Civil Rights Division is investigating the potential violations of the FACE Act. These people are desecrating a house of worship and interfering with Christian worshipers. And then you tagged Pam Bondi. Can you give me an update on this post, Harmeet?
Well, yes, actually, I posted that from an airplane, and Pam Bondi and my boss, had already been in touch about this incident, what we're going to do about it. And so I'm working hand in hand with her. We have sent federal prosecutors last night from my office in D.C. to Minnesota. They should be landing any moment now. We activated the FBI and the U.S. Attorney's Office as well. And this has the highest attention of the Attorney General and my Department of Justice team, because it is...
Now, I would argue, why is there not more attention to the Epstein files, which, if we have time today, I will play that video, because that is something where, when it comes to the Epstein files, I can understand everyone on all sides being upset at the fact that that is not moving forward. In fact, it's arguable that they're breaking the law on not releasing the files like they were told to do by Congress.
As you said in your intro, this isn't actually a question of whether we're going to stand for it. We don't stand for it in this country. And not every case that we do at the DOJ gets the headlines, but we've already prosecuted numerous attacks on churches so far in the last 9 months since I took office under Pam Bondi's leadership. We are investigating multiple attacks on synagogues. It is evil to attack any house of worship in America. It is illegal. And what I saw yesterday made me ashamed, frankly, for the United States that we have an attorney general in Minnesota, Keith Ellison, a district attorney, Mary Moriarty, a mayor, Jacob Fry, and Tim Waltz, Tampon Tim, who absolutely refuse to enforce our state laws. Their own state laws prohibit this very conduct. Well, if they're not going to enforce their laws, we will enforce our federal laws, and we are already doing that. And so, as you know, and as people have said, the prior administration prosecuted people under the FACE Act for peacefully praying outside abortion clinics where unborn children were being killed inside.
Yeah, ICE isn't going away. We need more ICE. In fact, there is some of you, those of you that are in the chat, I believe you looked this up for me while we're watching this, that there's 1,200 or maybe more military being activated that are going to be sent in, which is what we've needed for, long ago, is we needed military to come in and start backing up ICE. So we need the ICE with the Marines coming in. That's what we need.
Now that's protected by federal law. That's up to Congress. However, that same law gives us the right at the Department of Justice to prosecute the same kind of conduct vis-a-vis any house of worship. And there's been a lot of talk of the First Amendment thrown around. The First Amendment includes the right to pray without interference. It includes the right of these people to not have so-called journalists and a mob of activists disrupt their sacred day of prayer. And so
Newsom cheated on him. Newsom had an affair with his campaign manager's wife when he was running for, I think it was San Francisco mayor at the time, or it might have been governor of California, but I think it was San Francisco mayor. And he's had all kinds of alcohol problems and everything else. So Newsom will never get past a certain point because it's a Gabney Gaffey or something is the woman's name, but that story will come out. And it'll be all over for Newsom. And they're trying to hold that back as much as they can. And so far, and this is how strategy works in politics, is that they're not going to let that story out until they absolutely need to, because he's done everything he can to try and hide it. But probably one of the most sleazy, scummy, dirtbag things anyone could ever do. And Gavin Newsom did it. And I can't wait. I hope that he does get close. And then they do release that story, because the story is just so disgusting on what he did that I can't wait for it to come out and everybody hear it.
As far as I can tell, these very foolish people have already
Yeah, I mean, the Kimberly Guilfoyle thing was even not. I mean, she's just like, she's an attention whore, with Don Jr. and all that type of stuff. But this story with Gavin Newsom is like, you've got to be kidding me. And that the only reason he's even in the governor's mansion right now in California is because of his connections that he has. But when it goes to the presidency, this story will blow it all out of the water. There ain't no way.
Them self-identified online as to who they were. They posted who their accomplices were. Don Lemon has made numerous admissions online as to his participation here and his intention and his knowledge of what was going to happen inside that sacred place. And so we're gathering the facts, and there will be action here. I know people are frustrated. Where are the arrests, et cetera? Let me explain that for you and your team, Benny, because state prosecutors could have arrested some of these people yesterday. They don't have some of the same hurdles that we do in the DOJ. When DOJ, we gather our facts, we go to a federal judge. A federal judge has to issue the search warrants. We all know what the federal judges.
It's going to be hard to find, but there are stories out there. It's Gabney. Look up Newsom Gabney or Newsom affair, and you'll find it's her name is kind of weird. I don't remember it off the top of my head, but Yeah, and then there's also interviews with him. I have him saved. One of these days I'll put him. You know what I'll do is become a member. Go to DennisHendrickson.com. You can become a member there for free. And what I'm going to start doing at DennisHendrickson.com is I'm going to, those of you that are members there, I'll start putting out, I mean, I already do put articles and things like that out there that you wouldn't get on YouTube. But if you become a member there, I'll start putting that information up about those things that you can't really put up on YouTube because there's really not a space for it. There's no like text area or whatever article. You can't like write articles, text articles and things like that in YouTube, but I'll put them on DennisHendrickson.com. So just go in there and become a member for free. And I'll put that stuff out there, but I'll put the background about Gavin Newsom and the affair and other things like that. And I'm pretty sure I had done
are doing right now in Minnesota. We will pursue charges in this case. I see various crimes that have occurred. Exactly what they are, I'm not going to flag, but the FACE Act has been mentioned as one of the predicates there. In other cases, the Biden DOJ used the Klan Act conspiracy charges tacked on to the FACE Act in the case of protests outside abortion clinics to bring much longer sentences. So there are a number of tools available to us. Who funded this? What else? What other crimes may have occurred? Was there a use of the wires or the mails in preparing for this event? Did anyone cross state lines to do this? All of those are potential predicates for additional federal charges.
Harmeet, I've just pulled up the Klan Act because this is the first time that I've heard this mentioned. This is a act that was passed in 1871, correction there, to combat the Ku Klux Klan and protect African Americans' voting rights, especially the Enforcement Act, which is known as the Force Act.
Test 1, 2, 3.
So here's some of the information on screen. Would you mind breaking down for us, because we have just read the FACE Act and how this is an obscenity to the FACE Act, an obvious and egregious demonstrable violation of the FACE Act because they were entering a place of worship, harassing and threatening. We just played.
You guys hear me now? I don't know what happened. The mic just died. Probably because I was talking about Ruby Ripney. Yeah. Thanks, Matthew.
A video of a man, a bearded man, who was threatening to attack the Christians that were worshiping there. So it seems like an obvious FACE Act violation. But the Klan Act here, it is.
Now it's Audio Technica. I'm using a USB mic, Blue Yeti. This is the first time that I've had it shit the bed on me like that. That's not cool. I don't know what happened. I got to figure that out, but not cool.
On screen, first time I've heard it mentioned. Can you unpack this for us, Harmeet?
Yeah, the Klan Act is one of the most important federal civil rights statutes, and it goes back to the time when President Lincoln emancipated the slaves, and yet the southern states, Dixiecrats mainly, were refusing to give them equal rights. And in fact, that you had sheriffs and you had law enforcement harassing the newly freed slaves. So the Klan Act is a law that makes it illegal to terrorize citizens, to violate their civil rights, to get together and conspire to violate the civil rights. It is often used against law enforcement, but is now used against others as well. So whenever anyone conspires to violate the protected civil rights of American citizens, the Klan Act can be used to bring a conspiracy charge. We, in the federal law enforcement parlance, call this 241 and 242 civil and criminal conspiracies. And so what the Biden administration did is, if three grandmas got together to pray outside an abortion clinic for the souls of the people inside, and including unborn children, they would say, oh, that's not just a violation of the Klan Act, that's a conspiracy to violate the civil rights of women going in there to get abortions. And so we're going to add additional charges and punish that more and make it from a misdemeanor under the FACE Act to a felony under the Klan Act. And President Trump pardoned the pro-life protesters in those cases. I have recently defended successfully in the 11th Circuit a case called Oropesa, a case of Jane's Revenge, the pro-abortion protesters violently attacking crisis pregnancy centers in Florida. And we had the court uphold the Klan Act criminal enhancement to the FACE Act. So I know this is very deep in the weeds, but the point is, there are a number of things. The FACE Act is just the start. Like I said, you have material support for disruptive activities. You have conspiracy to violate civil rights. You have potentially the use of other instrumentalities to commit crimes. And so some of these folks who did this have self-identified. Don Lemon himself has come out and said he knew exactly what was going to happen inside that facility. He went into the facility and then he began, quote unquote, committing journalism. And as if that's sort of a shield from being an embedded part of a criminal conspiracy. It isn't. And so, we're getting our ducks in a row. We're putting the facts together. And this is a very serious matter. Come next Sunday, nobody should think in the United States that they're going to be able to get away with this. Everyone in the protest community needs to know that the fullest force of the federal government is going to come down and prevent this from happening and put people away.
Okay, new poll. Will there be significant arrests? It's almost 50-50. I'm glad that some people, 52 to 48, are positive or hopeful that there's going to be significant arrests. I'm not so sure there will be. So I'm going to end that poll, and I'm going to do a new one because I'm curious to see what you all think is going to happen to Don Lemon. Will Don Lemon be arrested? Forget about whether or not he gets convicted or anything else, but will Don Lemon or Lemon, whatever F he calls himself, will he actually be arrested? I say no. Wouldn't that be something if he gets rehired by CNN? I think he's trying to do that, actually. I think this is something where he thinks that he's gonna, if he keeps doing this kind of stuff, they'll hire him back. But, or the other thing too is he's doing all these things because the more controversial he is, the more attention he gets. So,
Very long time.
So praise God. I mean, that's just so wonderful to hear. I was thinking through and deconstructing this, Harmeet, and thinking
Benny Johnson's such a douchebag. I hate the fact that I even have to play this, but he's the only one who, as far as I know, has had this discussion with Harmeet Dillon. But he's another one. It's like, these guys. It's one thing to be a MAGA supporter and like these QAnon people trust the plan and every single thing that Trump does is right. Well, that's not the case. That's not what's happening. And you see somebody like him saying, oh, this is so wonderful. Nothing's happened yet. They're working on it, just like they've been working on all these other things, but nothing's happened. If the Clintons even get charged with anything, and that's not going to happen, but if that were to happen, then maybe I would be a little bit more positive. Something like this, even if it does happen, which I doubt that it will, isn't really that much of significance.
Well, wait a second. What would the left do if Alex Jones stormed a mosque and then started interviewing the imam up at the altar, right, or at the front of the mosque, question. Right, while everyone screamed at Muslims trying to pray? Of course, it would be the single biggest protest moment and offense, and people would lose their minds. The entire country would burn. There would be protests in every city in America. It'd be one of the biggest stories in the world. Why this is allowed to happen to Christians and why it is fomented and why it is giggled at, I'm so thankful for this administration for actually finally drawing the line, because of course you don't want to see this happen at a synagogue. And no, it's not an act of journalism if I kick in the door of a synagogue and run up to the rabbi and start live streaming them as people scream at at Jewish people trying to pray. No, that's not an act of journalism.
It's a desecration. And
it's an act of terrorism. Yes.
One of the issues here is the people on the left that we're talking about, they're not familiar with what goes on inside a house of worship. They're a lot of them are godless people, obviously, because otherwise, you're right. No matter what house of worship this happens at, this is illegal in America. The FACE Act is non-denominational. We are investigating FACE Act violations against synagogues. And, we have the same problem. There are godless people in this country who are terrorizing people where they are most vulnerable. That is the very last place this should happen in America. It should happen nowhere, of course. No one should feel afraid, but we won't tolerate it. The Attorney General feels deeply about this. We both spoke to the pastor last night who was so calm in the face of a threatening mob invading his sanctuary. He acted very, very bravely and appropriately, and we have given them some guidance on how to proceed here. But look, this will not be allowed to happen anywhere in America, and it's shameful.
That's so wondrous. It's so incredible to hear. So you and Pam Bondi called the pastor. You spoke with the pastor last night. Everyone's praising this pastor for such his calm and peaceful demeanor and keeping his head here.
Yeah, he's actually great, and it turns out he had a North Carolina accent, and I grew up in the same town as his wife, so it's a small world, and he's a great leader of his congregation. But I'm sure every pastor in America is worried: is this crazy lunatic mob, well funded by the left, going to come into my church? They better not. We will.
So then she just said, well funded. Okay, so why isn't there any discussion on that? Who funded this? Why is she not talking about that? And that's the problem I have here, is that this is all a facade. This is all just, all right, everybody calm down. We're gonna, it's just to calm down the MAGA, the Trump supporters and all that type of stuff. But in reality, is really anything going to happen from this? And what really should be happening is an investigation, which should have already happened, and there should have already been arrests on the people that are funding all of this stuff. And it's not happening.
We are on it, and we are putting all the resources possible into it.
Well, that's exactly right. I just wanted to set up a series of events for you, and I'm sure that you've already investigated this, because Don Lemon is speaking out directly to you and saying that he had nothing to do with it, except for, well, we can see that Don Lemon was delivering coffee to the protesters beforehand. In Don Lemon's own live, he said that he knows that the protest is about to go and pull up to certain locations. He can't tell us where they're going to go, but the organizer knew because she posted on Facebook right here. Here's her Facebook post explaining that they were going to attack a church that day. She even tags Don Lemon in this. Then Don...
Yeah, here you go, people. It looks like that is what happened. He knew, or was at least part of the plan, because here's somebody posting it online that that's what's happening.
Lemon gives the organizer, who's some famous BLM organizer from the George Floyd era. He gives her a kiss live on camera while Don Lemon is sort of leading the charge here into the church.
Yeah, I
And
mean,
so
she's
it
a lawyer
defies.
too.
Oh, really? So it defies explanation, Harmeet, that they didn't know that he's an innocent party and that he's just journalisming. Really quickly, if you don't mind, he had a message to you, and I'd like to play it here. He got your name wrong, but it's just an act of journalism. Here we go.
MAGA administration and the fake news MAGAs are losing their mind over something that's not even true. So let me just make it clear, because this assistant attorney general, I don't know, what's her name? Something Hammett, Gillen or whatever.
So thank you for joining the show, Hammett.
I had no affiliation to that organization. I didn't even know they were going to this church until we followed them there. We were there chronicling protests. Once the protest started in the church, we did an act of journalism, which was report on it and talk to the people who were involved, which included the pastor, members of the church, and members of the organization. That's it. It's called journalism.
Okay. Your response to Don
He's so arrogant too when he says that.
Lemon.
Well, look, I mean, we have a presumption of innocence in this country, so I want to preserve my ethical duties here. But let me just say that, he's a journalist. He was a journalist. I don't know what he is now, but journalism is not a badge or a shield that protects you from criminal consequences when you are part of a crime. And I think the videos show how close he was to these folks. I think further evidence will show more information about that, but he clearly knew, and he stated before going into the
Sarah, the arrogance of it. If he said, "Hey, look, guys, I just happened to be there, and they were saying that this was going on," and he went in there and he's like, "I didn't mean it." If he just said, "I didn't mean for any of this," or whatever, and was just humble about it, but he's not. He's arrogant. And that is the thing about people like this that believe that they can get away with. I mean, people who commit crimes are arrogant. And they're arrogant because they think that it's okay for them to do what they do. Like the Clintons not showing up for the subpoenas. Well, they're arrogant about it because they know nothing's going to happen to them and nothing will happen to them. And so when you see somebody like Don Lemon acting the way that he is in this arrogant fashion, it just makes things that much worse.
facility, it's on his own video, what was going to happen there. What was going to happen was a violation of federal law, federal criminal law. And I don't know what to say. I mean, the FACE Act has been out there for more than 30 years, and there were lawyers involved in this so-called protest, and their purpose was to terrorize people of faith in a house of worship. They were targeting a different pastor, not the one seen on camera, who they got information was a ICE supervisor. None of that matters. It's off limits to go into a house of worship to do your little protest. Protests can occur on public property. Protests can occur outside, on a sidewalk, certain sidewalks, not all sidewalks. And this is like basic what you learn in the first year of law school. There's a time, place, and manner restrictions on the First Amendment right of protest, and they were violated here in this case. No question about it. The only question is who was involved, how many were involved, and how many charges are going to be brought here. Those are the questions.
It's incredible.
And then she's once again leaving out the most important part. Who funded the operation? Where's the money coming from? Because it's nice that you arrest everybody that's involved in the actual protest part of it. And maybe even Don Lemon, which I'm not so sure is going to happen. But then who is the one, who are the people that funded it? Who are the people that gave the money to actually let this operation happen?
It's absolutely incredible to hear that. Could you talk us through the last time that this argument was used, which was January 6th, because I tend to recall, and I know many of them, people who were there on January 6th, and they were filming, right? And they said,
right.
Sorry, my phone was plugged in. They were saying, I was filming, and so therefore I'm a journalist, and I get protection from this act that the federal government said was criminal. And, and they didn't get any protection. Steve Baker is one that's pretty famous at the Blaze. But there were many others. And so that
Yes.
certainly did not shield these journalists on January 6th breaking in the U.S. Capitol, right?
Yeah, you're correct. Look, I've been practicing First Amendment law for over 30 years, and so I have represented many journalists, mostly conservative, not all conservative. And if someone were to come to me and ask me, hey, is it okay if I embed with a gang of criminals about to commit a crime and videotape it? I would say that would be a poor idea. Do not do that. Let me call my criminal defense attorney friend and let's get you retained. If you think you're going to do something crazy like that, you need to get your bail money ready. And I would advise against it. That would be my advice neutrally, just theoretically. Okay. Now, I don't, the leader of this, one of the organizers there who got the kiss from Don Lemon is a lawyer. She's a lawyer for BLM. She's a lawyer for the NAACP, or she has been historically, I think, leader of a chapter there of the NAACP.
There you go.
And a lawyer should know better because this law is well known. But forget the law. A human being should know better than to take their protest into an altar in front
Yeah, it makes you wonder how some of these people get their law degrees and their law licenses.
of a place where people
Yes,
are
of course.
coming to worship. It is literally supposed to be a sanctuary from all kinds of distress and fear, and a place to get comfort and solace. And this is just godless behavior to take that into a house of worship. It is, I don't know what we've come to here in this country that people are doing this willingly, but it won't happen again with impunity. It won't happen in this case with impunity. And it's just not going to happen in America. We won't tolerate it.
All right, let's check the poll here. Once again, it's split 50. I can't believe there's this many people. I'm starting to think that these polls are fixed somehow. So people do think that Don Lemon will be arrested. Like I said before, I do not believe that he will be. We'll see. But then again, I don't think that he will. And even if he does, it doesn't go far enough until you start arresting the people that are funding the operation.
I know that you cannot comment on this, but just the richness of Don Lemon potentially being charged by the Klan under the Klan Act is just going to be really something else. I wanted to give you an opportunity, since you're approaching this with such strength, to speak to this photo that's now gone viral. This young child who's being comforted by his father. This young Christian child, and he's what looks like either weeping or crying.
This is a horrible experience. So once again, this is inside the church, and here you have a kid who doesn't understand what's going on. They're just attending church, and they're being scared out of their mind because who knows what could be happening with all these people coming in and disrupting the service. So this is another thing where these people don't care about children. They don't care about anything. And that goes to show you the violence that you're dealing with, the mindset of these people that you're dealing with, is that they don't, it's one thing to protest, and I think you should be able to protest, but no difference than that Renee Good who's in her car driving into federal agents, as opposed to standing on the side of the road and protesting. Verbally, she decides that she's physically going to try and stop ICE agents from doing their job, and what many people voted for. And then everybody's up in arms when she ends up getting shot because she drives a SUV into a federal officer. Same thing here. And now it's just progressively gotten worse and worse, that people are starting to be violently attacked by these protesters. And like I said earlier, is how a lot of these protesters are telling people where to go, what to do. They're acting as if they're law enforcement or as if they're traffic cops. And then you come into a place of worship and you scare the hell out of a bunch of kids that are sitting in church. So, it's wild. But those of you here, we have 154 concurrent viewers, over 8,000 views. Those of you that are here, just a reminder, click the subscribe button. We go live at 2 p.m. Monday through Friday, and we're trying to figure out our times on the weekends. Let us know if on the weekends when you guys are around to watch live streams. But Monday through Friday at 2 p.m. in the afternoon Eastern Standard Time. Just be sure that you subscribe so when we do go live, you get reminded.
Or terrified. This is a image from the live feed where the man was going row by row. This bearded man was going row by row, screaming at and threatening the Christians, calling them fake Christians inside of their house of worship, and physically threatening harm. You can see the child here weeping in his father's arms. And then you can also see Don Lemon afterwards saying the purpose of this protest was to make these children uncomfortable. He said it live on his stream. I'd like to, perhaps you could give a message to these children in that church who experienced this. And then you can also see Don Lemon afterwards saying the purpose of this protest was to make these children uncomfortable. He said it live.
I'm not sure if he said that, but if Don Lemon said the purpose of the protest was to make the children uncomfortable, now, I don't know if that's true or not, but I can tell you right now, this is the other thing that is kind of hard for me to understand, and I forgot to mention too before, I'll come back to that in a second, where a lot of the parents are not really caring about their kids, seemingly, but especially the baby boomers, like we were showing you in Target, how they're returning that salt, and literally everyone in line who's protesting ICE was a white baby boomer. But you have Don Lemon who's saying that we want to make these kids uncomfortable. At some point, the parents have to stand up for their kids. And we're living in a time now where, of course, the baby boomers, like we were discussing on Sunday, have essentially just let this craziness, this communism take hold, and then ultimately destroy the futures of their kids and their grandkids and generations after that. But if Don Lemon says to make the kid, what do the kids know? The kids are in church. They're trying to, they're hanging out with their parents. How would they know what that's all about? And you could see in that picture that kid is scared. They don't understand why those people are there. They're kids. And so Don Lemon thinks that somehow that's like purposeful. I mean, that's what you're dealing with in these cases with these people.
Live on his stream. I'd like to, perhaps you could give a message to these children in that church who experienced this. What is the message from the DOJ, Harmeet?
The message from the DOJ is that the Attorney General of the United States has a zero tolerance policy for this. What we told the pastor of that congregation is we are very sorry.
That has to be an aggravated thing. If that's true, it should be aggravated, some sort of child endangerment or child abuse or something like that, for somebody like him to do that.
That they had to go through that terrorizing incident, and that we are sending reinforcements from DC to make sure that the crimes that occurred yesterday are fully prosecuted. And, there was a racial element to what was said as well. The man you're referring to, who I believe is a vet, very disturbed looking man. He had recently just been arrested and catch and released by Minnesota law enforcement officials.
Yeah, this guy down in the bottom right-hand corner of the video has been on quite frequently lying that he was arrested by ICE. He's been here's another leader of a lot of this stuff that's been going on. And yet this guy's still running around and hasn't been arrested. So here's another guy who's just running the streets, doing these things, causing chaos, and has not been pinched yet.
2 days earlier, I think it was on Friday, and that's why he was free to terrorize this child and his parents and this family. Shameful, but he's shouting about them being white and privileged, and so those are additional.
And that's the other thing that drives me insane is here's somebody who is white himself and talking about self-deprecating. I mean, it's so pathetic.
Things that we're looking at. Is there a racial element to this church being targeted? Because, that's also illegal in America, committing crimes on the basis of the race of the victims. And so I just commend this congregation. They are obviously godly people who were calm in the face of this. I mean, I see people calmly talking with Don Lemon, sticking his little goofy mic into their face. And that's not what they came to church for. They prepared their minds. They came to receive wisdom and seek the comfort of their colleagues and hear a teaching from the pastor. And instead, this is what they got. Well, the lesson learned here is going to be the lesson learned by these so-called protesters, that their right to protest ends outside the church. It does not extend inside the church. If they trespassed in a better run city and state, they would already have been arrested under state law, which can happen much more quickly than I can do, for violation of Minnesota's version of the FACE Act. It's also illegal to do this in Minnesota, and for trespass. I don't think anything's going to happen. I haven't heard a word from Keith Ellison or from Mary Moriarty, the district attorney in Hennepin County,
and you're not going to hear anything from them. And that's why the federal government has to step in and do something. But again,
this happened about these violations. I haven't heard a word from Tim Waltz about this. I haven't heard a word from the mayor of Minneapolis about this. That's a failure of leadership there, but thank goodness we have a strong and dedicated DOJ and Attorney General Pam Bondi, who will make sure that we explore every avenue to bring the most charges appropriate to do justice in this case.
We cannot emphasize enough how thankful we are for this leadership team at the DOJ. And here's why. You have to make examples. There has to be red lines. There has to be lines in the sand. There has to be hills to die on. And you do not want this happening to your church. Think about your church. Think about what's happened in churches around America, but including in Minneapolis, where 2 young children died after a transgender man shot the church up. 17 different bullets hit children while they were praying, not too far away from this location. The church is under attack. Christian schools are getting shot up and attacked. This is something that is growing.
This is a serious problem in Minnesota, Minneapolis especially. George Floyd was blocks away from what happened with the Renee Good thing. And all of this stuff that's going on in this town. It is really bizarre how screwed up it is in that state and city.
Left is attacking churches. It's godless. It's demonic. It has to end. And people need to be made examples of. And this is a perfect opportunity to do that at scale. And we're praying for you, Harmeet, and we're praying for the entire DOJ, and we're thankful for you standing up. This should not happen to any house of worship, Christian or otherwise. And so my Christian children who go to church every week are thankful for you. Thank you, Harmeet.
Thanks for having us.
Okay, our poll is 55% believe that Don Lemon is going to be arrested. I appreciate everyone's voting, and I certainly appreciate your optimism that something's actually going to happen to this guy. I certainly don't think that it will, and then once again, even if it does, that's great. But are we going to arrest the people funding this stuff? I want to go over one more, actually maybe a couple more videos here. There was I'll skip the Miami thing, but I've skipped this twice, about taxes in Detroit. Now, as we all know, Detroit has been a real major problem for a long time. All of the auto industry has left, and it's pretty much been left in shambles many decades ago. But now it's starting to sort of come back again, kind of. The problem with it, though, is that now that it's coming back, the government, which has always been Democrat, is now charging taxes to those who are moving into the area. They're charging property taxes that are in the tens of thousands of dollars. So let's listen to this particular story to blow your mind, and then we'll call it a day.
Maybe we can absorb $100, $200, $300 a month in a change, but we're talking 1,000 plus. I don't know many households that can absorb that. It's unsustainable.
We're not the only ones. This is happening everywhere in the city, in the suburbs, outside of Wayne County. Like it's happening everywhere, and it's not good.
Imagine this is your property tax bill, more than $19,000. It's the bill a Detroit couple was slapped with after they bought a duplex in 2024.
Yeah, something unexpected that they can't afford to pay. Historically, we know that homeowners in the city of Detroit have been paying some of the highest property taxes in the entire state. Shantae Passmore joins us now with more on what buyers need to be asking.
Well, good morning, everyone. Just driving around, you know Midtown is a hot zip code. So when a Floridian couple pondered where should they put down some roots, the Motor City just made...
Now, these people, just keep in mind, moved from Tampa, Florida to Detroit, Michigan.
the most sense, especially with all of the upswing in investment. Now they're concerned they're on the brink of losing their sliver of the American dream.
Goodbye, Tampa. Hello, Detroit. Krista Hegedus and Stephen Marsicano didn't just love the shops, eateries, and cultural history.
What brought you to the Motor City?
People.
The couple bought this duplex for approximately $456,000 in November 2024. The plan, keep the existing tenant and live next door.
You expected that the property taxes would go up, but to go from $3,500 what the former owner had paid to what you're facing, almost $20,000, what went through your mind?
The first initial part was we're going to lose the house that we just bought.
Local 4 contacted Detroit's Office of the Assessor to see how this tax bill ballooned to nearly $20,000. It pointed to how taxes are uncapped.
Well, in fairness, there are now Hillsborough County, Florida is relatively blue. Miami, or not Miami, but like the Fort Lauderdale, Broward County, those places are very blue as well. And so taxes now in Florida are going up significantly, property taxes also, but not anywhere near like New York and New Jersey. New York and New Jersey have always been insane. The difference between New York and New Jersey, even though it's not justified at all, is that at least there's industry there to where salaries can sort of absorb it, or you could sort of justify paying them because you're making enough money to be able to afford them to a certain extent. Even though I hate saying that because it's still ridiculous and way too much for what you get. But Detroit is a completely different scenario because Detroit is, I mean, they were knocking homes down because there's so many abandoned homes in Detroit, or the Detroit area. And people were buying and purchasing properties, I think, for maybe $100 or $300 because they were essentially giving properties away. And now these people come into an area that's sort of getting better, and yet the same Democrats that are running the government, just like any government in any town or any state, they believe that money somehow grows on trees. And so then what they do is they start to abuse and take money away from the actual working class and business owner. And that's essentially what's happening here. Pinellas is, Hillsborough and Pinellas County they're probably pink, really. But Hillsborough is definitely blue. I mean, you have a blue, actually both Pinellas County and Hillsborough County are run by Democrats, I believe.
Once a property is sold per state law. Later, the taxable value will only rise by the rate of inflation or 5%, whichever is less, every year after the uncapping. Realtors tell me the couple is not alone, citing homeowners face a double whammy in Detroit, a historically high tax rate and overassessment.
But in theory, isn't the assessment based on a formula?
Yeah, it should be. But that formula seems to have gone rogue at some point. My concern is that it's going to stop our recovery. It's gonna impede it. We need to resolve this, or else forget about what's gonna come next. There will be nothing next. It's over. And I pray that the city recognizes that.
Back home, the couple hope to be a part of the city's growth, but now their investment feels punitive.
Why do you call it a punishment?
If we didn't buy this place, we wouldn't be dealing with a random $20,000 tax bill.
All right, so we've been working on this story since around Thanksgiving. Some minor developments this morning. The city did do a reassessment recently, and we learned the couple did buy the duplex for about $119,000 less than the former owner. Yet the city explained to me the taxes are not based on the property value, but the actual market value. And because the couple has been living in the unit, they actually have an exemption. So that shaved off about $2,400, but still their bill is more than $17,000 for the foreseeable future. So in other words, they'll be paying more on their taxes than their down payment every year.
It's
crazy. Oh my God.
It's wild.
Boy, so are there questions that can be asked? Is there a way to prepare for something like this happening or avoid it?
That's great. So if you're a buyer, agent, loan officer, the two critical questions you need to be asking: when was the last time the property was uncapped? And then, is the property currently covered by a homestead exemption? Now, if you're already in the home and you're dealing with a very similar situation, experts say there are a few different types of getting some sort of recourse here. So first, try to work it out informally with your assessor's office. Second, submit an appeal to the March Board of Reviews. And then lastly, escalate to the Michigan Tax Tribunal. But I gotta say, folks really need to take advantage of the first option because the rejection rate at options 2 and 3 much higher than if you try to work it out with your local assessor.
Yeah, and include the realtor in there. This has happened to me where if you go, they can help you with that board of review, get the documents you might need, but a lot of times, sometimes realtors won't let you, they want the sale and they don't let you know that's going to be uncapped.
Because the burden of proof falls on the buyer.
Yes. Good advice.
It just kind of
once again, it's the buyer. Now the realtor, of course, doesn't get held accountable. There needs to be at least information ahead of time to warn somebody that comes in. That's something that can make or break you. If you can't afford to keep the home because the taxes are going to be reassessed, because maybe the homeowner that had it before had this exemption and they were locked in for many, many years, that's just not fair. Now, again, the buyer, I don't know what you can do to find out what they're going to be reassessed at, but I would think that there's probably somebody there you can contact and find out. But here's the problem. The problem is, and let's say Stanley, welcome. Not So Green, welcome. Jeep Girl, I recognize your name. Thanks for being here. Palomo. Everybody be sure, Frank, be sure to subscribe because we are going to go live 2 p.m. every weekday. And if you subscribe, it'll notify you when I go live. And also become a free member. I was saying earlier at DennisHendrickson.com. That is our newsletter where I will put out information that I can't put on YouTube because there's really no place for it. Plus, YouTube in some cases doesn't like some of the stuff that I put out. But once again, yes, this is a problem with Democrat-run cities. Mary Sheffield, a Democrat, was elected in November 2025 and is continuing a long line of Democratic mayors. Before Sheffield assumed office of the 76th mayor, the position was held by Mike Duggan, a Democrat. City Council. While Detroit municipal elections are technically nonpartisan, the City Council is dominated by individuals affiliated with the Democratic Party. Voter support. Detroit is an overwhelmingly Democratic electorate, with voters supporting Democratic presidential candidates by ratios as high as 9-1. Wayne County leadership, county executive, Warren Evans, a Democrat, has served the Wayne County executive since 2015. And it goes on and on. So somebody in here said, keep voting Democrats. Frank, keep voting Democrats, Detroit. And this is what you get. It's one thing to be a liberal and vote Democrat, and then you don't think that anything's going to happen to you. But I guarantee you, this couple here, it's probably people who decided they were going to vote Democrat, but now it's hitting them in the face. Now they're starting to see, oh shit, I voted Democrat and now my taxes are $20,000 a year. And my house is a duplex that I can barely afford at $500,000. That is probably way overpriced for Detroit, by the way. But it's one of those really cool, like, hipster places to live in Detroit. So the dorks who vote blue want to live there because they get really cool places to go to brunch. And then all of a sudden they get kicked in the balls because, oh, we bought this house that we can't afford, but it's a duplex, so the other side can get rented, so it'll pay half of our mortgage. But then that really doesn't mean anything, because when you get a $20,000 tax bill, which that $20,000 really pays for nothing, the bunch of corrupt people who are Democrats are probably using it to, like, paint streets and stuff with rainbow flags. Now all of a sudden it's a problem for them, and then they go to the news and the news talks about it. So I don't have a lot of sympathy for people like that. But, you know, this is the problem. There is with these people that are running these governments are buffoons. They're complete nitwits they've never signed the front of a check for owning a business or payroll or anything like that. So they don't know or understand it's not their money. So for them, they could just take people's tax dollars and just piss it away. And so, you know, that's the problem that we have with these types of governments now. And Hillsborough is sort of going in that direction in Florida. I believe Pinellas is pretty blue as well. And that's why, again, also you have so much crime that's going on in those particular cities. Florida as a whole is a very red state, and DeSantis kind of turned that around. And we also have a very interesting gubernatorial race that's happening in Florida. And we have a guy by the name of James Fishback who is going to be running against Byron Donalds, and he seems to be gaining quite a bit of popularity. So we'll have to see what happens there. But I'm going to go over, actually, I'll go over one more thing. Miami Beach. So we have somebody, I don't care what your, kind of affiliation is politically or whatever, but Miami is starting to turn, on the whole blue thing, Miami's starting to kind of turn blue as well. And something that happened recently that's very, very scary. There's a woman who posted something on Facebook, and the Miami Beach police chief apparently sent detectives to her house questioning her about her post. Let's take a listen.
Picture to make sure it's you. We're not sure.
Okay.
Is that your account?
I refuse to answer questions without my lawyer present. So I really don't know how to answer that question either.
Well, like I said, you're not going to jail.
This is freedom of speech. This is America, right?
And
Veteran.
And I agree with you 100%.
Okay.
We're just trying to see if it's you, because if we're not talking to the right person, we want to go see who the right person is.
Okay, how can I help you?
So pretty much it's just a statement that was made as far as,
verbatim, it says the guy who consistently calls for the death of all Palestinians tried to shut down a theater for showing a movie that hurt his feelings and refuses to stand up for the LGBTQ community in any way. Even leaves the room when they vote and on related matters. Wants you to know that you are all welcome. Clown face, clown face, clown face. 3 days ago.
So you don't know if it was you?
I'm not going to answer whether that's me or not.
Okay.
The concerning part, and not concerning for the person who's posting it, what we're just trying to prevent is somebody else getting agitated or agreeing with the statement. We're not saying it's true or not.
Understood.
That guy who consistently calls for the death of all Palestinians, that can probably incite somebody to do something radical. That's all we're here to talk about.
So that was the problem they had, is apparently a guy who calls for the death of Palestinians. Now, she's not, whether you agree with it or not, it's not about calling for violence. It's not about telling someone to call for violence. This is a problem where somebody's saying, okay, we don't like what you're posting. We're going to send detectives to your house to intimidate you. That's what this is.
About, and we wanted to get your side. If it was you that posted that, I would think
Their excuse. Now listen to this.
To refrain from posting things like that, because that can get something
I
inside.
appreciate your concern.
We want you to refrain from posting those types of things because it might make somebody else do something. That's bullshit. That's bad. And now that's a slippery slope to where you're getting into censorship. She's not telling anybody to do anything, but these guys are just making this stuff up saying, oh, well, wait a minute. You know, by you posting this, it may do this, it may do that. She's not saying that at all.
Appreciate you coming out here.
Okay,
That's it?
That is it.
Okay.
I'm going to maintain my amendment rights to not answer the question about whether or not that's right. I hope that's understandable.
All right.
Good for her.
Thank you
Have
as
a good
well.
day, okay?
You as well. Thank you. Take care.
Good for her for doing that. Now, I may not necessarily agree with what she has to say, and you don't have to. But I certainly don't agree that you send people to your house. I mean, they couldn't do anything because it's her First Amendment right to say what she wants to say. That's crazy. Is this where we're going with Miami now? So we're extending from, Fort Lauderdale, West Palm Beach, and now we're going to go all the way to Miami and have this kind of Gestapo type thing. If somebody posts something that somebody doesn't like, based on a certain community, we're going to start sending detectives to your house. Now, that's the type of thing that James Fishback is talking about. And he was just recently on Matt Gaetz's show. And they talked about that and what he said he's going to do.
I spoke with that woman earlier today. It is disgusting that in a so-called free state like Florida, the police would bang on her door and confront her over an alleged anti-Semitic remark. It was not anti-Semitic. She was merely criticizing the Miami Beach mayor for his support for the Israeli government. Our founding fathers, Matt, you know this, your viewers know this. They fought and died for our right to criticize this government that of course extends to Israel, Russia, Ukraine, or any other foreign government. This attack on free speech has to end. In this particular case, what I would do as governor is I would use my powers vested under Article 4, Section 7A of the Florida Constitution and immediately remove the mayor of Miami Beach for dereliction of duty, for essentially using his office to politically pursue someone who merely disagreed with him on the internet.
So I agree with that. I think that mayor should be removed for doing that. That's an abuse of power, regardless of what you think about what was said. Again, it's freedom of speech. People on both sides are going to say things as long as it's not inciting violence and telling someone to commit violence. Then absolutely, people should be able to say what they want to say without fear of being intimidated by police. And that's exactly what happened here. All right. We've got quite a few more people in here. I do want to play one more video, and then I will call it a day. But this is CoffeeZilla. I don't know if many people are familiar with CoffeeZilla or not. He is a guy who is, a bipartisan kind of guy. What he does and what his expertise is he calls out scams mostly is what he does. And most of the stuff that he's been calling out throughout his career has been crypto scams. And a lot of people and celebrities and e-celebrities and people like that who have been involved in crypto scams and have been ripping people off, doing what they call rug pulls and things like that. Now, this in particular is something that I think a lot of us are losing touch on and maybe not discussing as much because of what's going on with the Don Lemon thing and what's going on in Minnesota and all of the Somali stuff and the ICE agents and everything else. We're losing sight of what's going on with the Epstein files. Now, regardless of what you think about the administration and all that stuff with the Epstein files, et cetera, bottom line is that Congress had said that, look, the Epstein files need to be released. They need to be released on this certain date. A certain amount of files need to be released. All of this stuff that they have said. And CoffeeZilla gives his opinion on that and what's going on right now with the Epstein files. And I think it's an interesting take.
The government is breaking the law with the Epstein files. They were supposed to release all of them. They did not. They were supposed to explain redactions. They did not. They were supposed to have limited redactions that did not allow them to redact on the basis of embarrassment or for politically exposed people. They did that. They redacted actual people who were investigated in the Epstein case, not just the victims. And this is in violation of the bipartisan law that Donald Trump signed only months ago. It's a law called the Epstein Transparency Act, and I've excerpted a few bits of it for you, where specifically they could not redact all the files. They had to release all of them by a certain day, which they missed. They didn't hit that deadline. They said they needed more time to review. But of the stuff we've already gotten, they've redacted more than they were supposed to. The law says that they can't redact on the basis of embarrassment, reputational harm, political sensitivity. Basically, they can't just say like, oh, we don't like that guy's name is coming out. They only can redact on the basis of like national security or if it's a victim. And even if they do redact, they have to explain why they did so. They have to give a summary of redactions made, including the legal basis. And they did not do that either. Not only did they make redactions that clearly in the context are not victims at all, but rather possible perpetrators. They're redacting possible perpetrators, but they also haven't explained anything they did redact. And on the DOJ website, you can see that they are just not interested in following the law here because they say they're going to redact personal information pertaining to victims, which is according to the law. Then they say other private individuals, but that again is not what the law says. The law makes no provision for that. So the DOJ has sort of taken the law that was passed and kind of just like reinterpreted it. And even still, they're not complying with it because, as I said, they were supposed to release everything by a certain day. Here's the status of that. So far, 2.4% of the total pages that are under review have been released. They say they have, and I'm not even kidding, 5 million pages of documents related to Epstein. They also say they have 2 million documents under review. So far, they've released 12,000.
That's crazy. Those are crazy numbers. Let's take a look at our poll because I think I want to do another one. Will Don Lemon be arrested? 59% say yes, 41% say no. I do appreciate the optimism. I don't think that's going to happen, but we'll leave it at that. And while we continue to play this, I'm going to put another one out. Do you think the Epstein files will be released in its entirety?
And a lot of those were entirely redacted with no explanation, right? Like against the law, no explanation of this. But what's crazy and like what I can't wrap my head around is my entire life, I was led to believe Congress like had some power or were able to do things. They made laws and you had to follow those laws, right? That's really important to follow the laws Congress passes. But maybe not. We're seeing that the DOJ is really testing that here because theoretically, who would enforce the laws that Congress is, making? Probably the DOJ, the Department of Justice. What if the Department of Justice isn't following the laws? Who is going to get them in trouble? Because Pam Bondi is just flagrantly disregarding and reinterpreting some of the laws here. And there is a challenge to this in court. And the DOJ basically wrote in court that, well, actually, even if we did violate this, maybe there's no cause of action here. We aren't responsible for any of this because there was a petition of the court to appoint something called an independent monitor and special master. Specifically, this was to force them to comply with the law. This was written by a Republican and Democrat, and it says, put simply, the DOJ cannot be trusted with making mandatory disclosures under the act, and essentially they have to put someone independent in charge of this whole event. And the Department of Justice wrote in today that they don't believe there's a cause of action here by the Epstein Transparency Act. So even if there is a consequence, if a statute does not specify...
No, Jeep Girl, I don't think Pam Bondi's doing anything she's supposed to be doing. And that's why, no matter what, I'm sure, I think everybody should want the Epstein files to be released, no matter what side you're on. And then the Harmeet Dillon thing with Don Lemon and all the stuff that's going on in Minnesota. Has anyone been arrested? Will anybody be arrested for all of the things that have gone on during the Biden administration that Trump kept on saying? I mean, no. Pam Bondi's doing nothing. And it makes you wonder, why? I mean, I think we know why, but at the same time, will anything be done about it? And this is where I think the base is getting to the point where they're throwing their hands in the air and saying, I'm not voting anymore. And they're very much at risk and losing the midterms. I mean, the midterms are definitely in danger.
Consequence for non-compliance with statutory timing provisions, the federal courts will not in the ordinary course impose their own coercive sanction. So what exactly can they get in trouble with if they don't comply with this? If they just redact whatever they want, they don't provide a summary of what they redacted, they redact people they shouldn't have redacted, who is going to get them in trouble? I mean, basically they're arguing to a court. They're like, well, they didn't say what's going to happen to us if we didn't comply with it. So that's kind of on them. It's actually amazing to watch the flagrantness in which they do this. It's so brazen. I want to play a clip of one of the Republicans who actually wrote this whole appointment of an independent monitor.
So Thomas Massie, it's the only guy that I think right now we can trust. Some may argue Marjorie Taylor Greene, who is resigning from Congress. But isn't it crazy that you only have this one guy, Massie, and when Massie's the one who wants all this stuff to be done, he gets attacked by Trump. But yeah, both sides want the Epstein files to be released, or have to be released. So this is something that's bipartisan. I think all of us can get behind and say, this thing, needs to be done. But doesn't it make you wonder too, as important as this whole thing is, why all of this other stuff is going on in the meantime to distract you from this story?
He talks on breaking points about, what their goal is, and I just think it's worth listening to.
Pam Bondi is violating the law. She missed the December 19th deadline. She missed the deadline 15 days after that, where they had to justify redactions and give Congress a list of politicians who were involved in the Epstein files. So they've missed 2 deadlines. But I'm concerned more about what they're redacting and what they're withholding than I am about these deadlines. And that's why we've asked this judge to appoint a special master. It's might makes right. They're doing this. They're disobeying the law because I think they're trying to test and see if there's any way it can be enforced.
I think Ace is a really good question. How can we make a difference? I mean, I'm trying to think of the guy's name. He's a Democrat, but it doesn't make him wrong on what he said. And I'll think of his name in a minute. He actually has a show right now on MSNBC, and he said, you have to be willing to not vote. You have to be willing to withhold your vote. Because he said, I promise you that if they know that you will withhold your vote, they will actually listen to you. Because what's happening now is you see the Republicans are now saying, you can't vote Democrat or you can't not vote. You have to vote Republican, or the Democrats are going to get in. So they keep saying this, and then when they get in, they don't do anything, like arrest the people that they say they're going to arrest. So I got to look his name up. He says the hammering. Lawrence O'Donnell. Lawrence O'Donnell on MSNBC. He just keeps saying, and he was a Democratic strategist. So basically what he said is, and this goes for any politician, if they know that you're going to get the vote, or they're going to get your vote, then they don't have to listen to you. And I know that it's not as easy. People will argue, well, you can't not vote because if you do, then the other party gets in. But at some point, you have to vocalize. You have to let them know that, hey, my vote means something, and that I'm willing to withhold that vote because so far, every time I voted for you, you're not doing what I'm asking you to do. We don't have numbers on mass deportations. If you go on the White House website, they're not publishing the deportations. All of this stuff and all of this show in Minneapolis is great. Actually, it's a mess, but it's a distraction from the fact that, there aren't mass deportations that are going on, even though they promised that they would. So What can we do about it? You have to vocalize it. You're willing to withhold your vote. That's the only thing.
That's exactly what they're doing. They're like half complying with the law, but specifically not with the parts that actually matter. And then they're telling the court, well, there's no cause of action to force us to actually do it. And who ultimately is going to stop them? Who's going to prosecute the government? The government won't. I mean, what are we talking about here? And what's interesting about this is that clearly not everybody is happy about this. This has actually been hugely humiliating for people who basically ran on the whole, we're going to release the Epstein files. Remember Dan Bongino, the guy who's been humiliating himself on national TV saying like, oh, I looked at the files.
I've seen the whole file. He himself.
But also the guy who a few years ago was like, dude, we have to look into the Epstein files.
There are a lot of people who are knee deep in the Washington swamp who are not telling you the truth about serious allegations out there that Epstein may have had video and audio of people out there.
Well, he apparently was.
How many people watched Dan Bongino and looked at Dan Bongino and thinking, okay, once he gets in along with Kash Patel, that all of a sudden all this stuff is going to really, all right, they're really going to turn things around. And then Dan Bongino's out. And then all of a sudden he's saying that he's going to go against all the black pillars, all the people that are talking negatively about the administration and what's going on. He's going to fight against them. So what happened to all this talk when you had your show before you became assistant director? And these are the things that people look at and go, what the F is going on?
Thinking about resigning amid the Epstein fallout after the July 5th memo disaster, and then actually did resign. The announcement was a few days before the final release of the Epstein files, the latest deadline. He decided he was going to resign on that day. This is his last post about it. It was a busy last day on the job. This will be my last post on my account. Tomorrow, I will return to civilian life. And honestly, I can't think of a more humiliating thing to happen to somebody, to go into public office and be like, we're going to fight the deep state, and then leave having done nothing to fight the deep state. Literally, this guy has the cringiest posts. Like, what I have learned has shocked me to my core. We cannot run a republic like this. I'll never be the same after learning what I learned. Dog!
That was the other thing. He writes that post and everybody was like, whoa, I wonder what this is. I wonder what he's talking about. And all of a sudden it's crickets. You don't hear a thing.
What did you learn? Tell us if you actually know something, if you actually found something in your investigation in the year that you investigated the government. Say it. Don't go back to your podcast making millions of dollars. Why don't you actually do something about it? Or when you are back at your podcast making millions again, why not tell everybody what happened? But we're not going to see that. We're going to see him continue to suck up to this administration, of course, even though it has betrayed the very thing that he came to the government for. Now, finally, I'll just say that I have to give a special mention to the Clintons, who are trying to do their own little weaseling out of the law maneuver. Because I don't know if you guys remember, the Clintons issued this whole statement that, we don't need protections from the Epstein files, just let everything out. And everyone was like, yeah, sure, that's fine. We don't care. Literally lock them all up, whoever's involved. And they said as much. Basically, they said, we need no such protection. And then Bill Clinton came out and was like, yeah, actually, we're not going to comply with that subpoena you guys issued. Because Congress was like, hey, you got to come testify. And they were like, no. We said we don't need protection, but actually, we're not going to.
I told you, I said this earlier today. Earlier in the show that, yeah, they were brought up or they were subpoenaed to testify in front of Congress, and they're like, we're not going to do that. But so what happened with Steve Bannon and Peter Navarro? They arrested Peter Navarro at the airport and put him in shackles and walked him through the airport like a prisoner. Steve Bannon, they did a perp walk with him too. Do you think that's going to happen with the Clintons?
Not going to show up. And that was also a bipartisan thing, by the way, subpoenaing the Clintons.
I think everyone knows by now Bill Clinton did not show up. And I think it's important to note that this subpoena was voted on in a bipartisan manner by this committee. This wasn't something that I just issued as chairman of the committee. This was voted on by the entire committee in a unanimous vote of the House Oversight Committee to subpoena former President Clinton and former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. Now, Hillary Clinton's supposed to show up tomorrow. we'll see what happens there. But with respect to the former president, he did not show up today.
And so they might hold Clinton in contempt. I mean, I don't actually believe it. I will not believe anyone will face any charges for this, any problems for this ever until I see it. I have such little faith in our government, given how apparently super focused we are on protecting the people in these files. We're so focused on it that I don't believe for a second that Clinton, that Trump,
And that's really what this is about. It's everybody's protecting each other. And even Trump, I mean, let's be honest. I grew up in New York, New Jersey, and, he was part of this entire crew of politicians and Democrats and everything like that. All the people that knew Epstein and everything in New York City and all that stuff. It's all one big club, like that comedian said. It's all one big club, and we're not in it. And that's what this is about. Everybody's just protecting each other.
Nobody's going to get exposed. Nobody's going to get locked up. It's clear that the DOJ will break the law to make sure that they don't expose anybody, ironically, breaking the law with relation to Jeffrey Epstein, except for Jeffrey Epstein himself. That's the only guy that will face any consequences for this. Obviously, Ghislaine Maxwell is in the nice club fed now. She's not suffering as much anymore. She's running the place over there. Epstein's that who's facing accountability. It's actually crazy. So I just wanted to talk about this. I wanted to flag the fact that the DOJ is basically making the argument that there's no way, even if we didn't comply, you could ever force us to comply, which is, a crazy thing to say. But maybe we should have expected it, given that Pam Bondi has been literally running on this promise since early on. Someone found this old clip of her.
Florida ranks 3rd nationally in calls for help for human trafficking, where young women and children are enslaved and abused. I knew we needed all hands on deck, and I'll fight to put human trafficking monsters where they belong, behind bars.
I mean, let's give it up for Pam. She has been keeping human trafficking monsters behind bars.
There you go. We'll end it on that one. Yeah, she is annoying. I mean, just listening to her talk is unreal. No Logic, welcome. Thanks for being here. Yeah, what happened to the 30,000 emails? Critical. Todd Reynolds. Nick Patterson, welcome. Again, Jeep Girl Aces, D-Man. James. Thank you all for being here. Had a great stream for 2 hours. And again, thank you for listening. Thank you for being here. Be sure to subscribe on your way out. Also, be sure to join for free at DennisHendrickson.com. That is our Substack. You can join there for free. So anything that I post there, you'll be notified and be part of our crew over there. And then once again, when you subscribe to the YouTube channel, you will be notified when we go live. We're going to be going live for a while every day at 2 p.m. on the weekdays. We're still trying to figure out what the best times are on the weekend. And let's see what the poll ended up being. Will the Epstein files be released in their entirety? This is the first time, actually, that we have a poll that is significant in one direction. 79% of you say no. I agree with that. We probably will not. So, all right. So thank you again, everybody, for being here. I appreciate it. We will see you tomorrow at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. Thanks again for being here. We'll see you later. Have a great rest of your day.